historical role of vocabulary selection, early approaches. Right. So we are dealing with this topic under the main topic, origins of language curriculum design. Right. So we will be just looking at what were the early approaches to vocabulary selection and what were their key role towards the notion of syllabus design in the earlier decades of the 20th century. Right. As we know, like vocabulary and grammar, they are the two key components of language learning. They go hand in hand, like. And if we want to learn, if we want to teach a language, we need a corpus of words, and we also need an order to put those words. I mean, the grammar, the grammatical syllabus. So they were considered to be the main building blocks of language teaching in the earlier decades, right? And right, and if we see like vocabulary selection approaches from the perspective of West, an applied linguist who has played a pivotal role. I mean, has given some useful insights about vocabulary selection and what approaches to be employed. Right. So, according to West, language teaching is not easy. I mean, it's very complex task. So, it involves various variables. And one of the variables involved is what to select and what not to select. I mean, the lexical items, right? If we, for example, if we select vocabulary randomly, some of the words might be irrelevant, so might be a useless exercise for the learners. So, what West observed in the 1950s was like various parameters of vocabulary selection should be employed, and what those parameters had some relevance to the notion of syllabus design. Okay, so what West's observation reveals is that, I mean, there was a sort of tension going on to find out systematic way of language teaching which could simplify English content for the learners in the classroom. So right. So one of the earliest approaches to vocabulary selection was the frequency count. I mean, the textbooks could be based on words that frequently happened in normal everyday use of language corpus, right? So materials were read, selected, and then the textbooks were based on those selected words, right? And for example, this approach had some of its limitations. For example, if the syllabus is based on selection of Time magazine, the learners might not be familiar with words related to children's literature. So obviously it had some its limitations, which were right. And these approaches to vocabulary selection, you know, had revealed some key facts about language usage, and there were some formulas devised, and I believe Richards has very beautifully put this in language curriculum design book 2001. Like if the learners knew 3,000 words, they could speak 85% of its language. So, but it was a bit skeptical notion which the applied linguists were aware of, right? So, based on its, limitations, the frequency, the counting of words and syllabuses based on frequent words was not a useful or rational approach, because, for example, in the earlier syllabuses teaching book, pen, desk, dictionary, there were much needed words, right? And these were words which could be found in earlier textbooks, but these words usually didn't happen frequently in the corpus of language materials on which the textbooks were based. Right. So it's Van Els and some other researchers, they have they have very clearly drawn our attention towards the limitations faced by the approaches to vocabulary selection. I mean, text comprehension is not just a function of the proportion of familiar. For example, if you know every word of the dictionary, it doesn't mean you can speak English language. So, but depends on a number of other factors. That were the factors which paved the ground to the notion of syllabus design. So, what were those factors? The subject matter, the way the writer approaches the subject. I mean, how the text could be comprehended, what variables are involved, and the extent to which the reader is already familiar. I mean, in which context the text actually takes place. Right.